There is a kind of power that does not shout, a strength that does not demand. It waits, it listens, it watches, it is still. You may not see it in the chaos of your daily life, the rush of expectation, the burden of roles you must play, the noise that floods every quiet space. But this power exists. And when you are ready to turn inward, when you are ready to stop seeking and begin seeing, it is there, waiting. This is the beginning of healing, not the kind that is loud and triumphant, but the kind that arrives silently, almost unnoticed, like dew settling on the petals of a lotus, like breath in meditation, like dawn rising over a world still asleep. Silence is not empty. Silence is full of everything we avoid, everything we fear, everything we long to understand. And so to heal in silence is not to escape life. It is to return to it fully, with a deeper presence than before. The Buddha understood this well, long before we had the language of psychology, of trauma, of self-care. The Buddha walked into the forest, sat beneath a tree, and began to look deeply into his mind, into his suffering, into the nature of the world itself. And in that stillness, the great wheel of transformation began to turn. You do not need to renounce your life or run away to the mountains. Stillness is not a place. It is a way of being. It is a choice. And in that choice, the deepest healing begins. Healing begins with perception, with the simple act of seeing things clearly, without the filters of fear or desire. When you are silent, truly silent, not just on the outside but within, you begin to notice how much of your suffering is born from misperception. You believe things are permanent, that are not. You believe the mind is you, when it is only a tool. You believe your emotions are truth, when they are only messengers. In silence, we begin to hear those messengers clearly. Anger says, "You are hurt." Fear says, "You are uncertain." Grief says, "You have loved." None of them need to be suppressed. They need to be listened to with the same compassion the Buddha offered to all beings, the fierce, unwavering compassion of truth. Truth is not always comfortable, but it is always kind. To perceive rightly, you must train your mind, not to think more, but to think less compulsively, not to become smarter, but to become more present. A wandering mind is not free. It is caught in its own stories. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is attachment to ideas, to identity, to outcomes. When we return to silence, we begin to untangle these attachments. We begin to see that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. You are not your pain. You are not your past. You are not your thoughts. In silence, that truth becomes not just a theory, but a felt experience. And from that experience, your mind becomes clearer, sharper, wise. Wisdom is not the accumulation of knowledge. It is the seeing through of illusion. And that seeing happens not in noise, but in quiet. There is a clarity that arises when we are no longer trying to perform, to explain, to justify ourselves. The ego softens, the inner critic grows quiet, and in that stillness, a deeper intelligence awakens. The kind that knows the right action, not because it has been calculated, but because it arises naturally from the harmony of the moment. This is why the Buddha taught the Eightfold Path, not as a list of commandments, but as a way of living that flows from inner clarity, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. These are not external rules. They are internal alignments. They do not restrict. They liberate. And this liberation is not something distant or abstract. It begins here, now, in how you speak to yourself, in how you choose to pause before reacting, in how you sit with discomfort instead of fleeing from it. Every moment becomes a doorway, but to walk through, you must slow down. You must be willing to feel the ground beneath your feet, the breath entering your lungs, the weight you have been carrying, and the quiet invitation to set it down. You do not need to force awakening. You need only make space for it. Stillness is that space. It is the space where thoughts settle like dust in a sunbeam, where the heart speaks softly after years of being ignored, where the body, worn from years of tension, begins to unclench, where your very presence becomes medicine, not only for you, but for those around you. This is why the greatest healers are often the quietest people in the room. Their silence is not empty. It is full of listening, full of understanding, full of love. To become that kind of presence, you must unlearn much of what you've been taught. You must unlearn the need to prove yourself, to defend yourself, to fix what is not yours to fix. You must stop looking outside for permission to rest, to breathe. You must remember the stillness you were born with. That stillness is not passive. It is not weakness. It is power. The kind of power that cannot be stolen, only remembered. It does not need followers. It does not fear judgment. It simply, this is the paradox of healing. You become whole not by adding more to yourself, but by letting go. You do not need to become anything else. You need only return. Return to presence, return to breath, return to the quiet knowing that was always there beneath the noise. When you do, your actions will change, not because you force them, but because they are now rooted in clarity. In stillness, you will speak less, but say more. You will do less, but accomplish more. You will chase less, but receive more, because silence is not absence, it is alignment. And in that alignment, life flows more freely. The Buddha did not teach that the world is suffering to frighten us. He taught it to free us. He taught that suffering exists, that it has a cause, that it has an end, and that there is a path to that end. This is not a belief. It is an invitation to stop running, to turn and face what is, and in doing so discover who you really are. You are not your story. You are not your wounds. You are not your fear. You are awareness, and awareness, when unclouded, is healing in its purest form. You do not need to understand everything to begin. You need only be still, breathe, watch, let the mind settle, let the heart open, let the silence speak. And when it does, it will not use words, it will use presence. And in that presence, you will remember, you were never broken, you were only buried, and now in stillness you rise. And so you rise. Not with noise, not with fanfare, but with a steady breath, a gentle awareness, a rooted calm. This is not the rising of ambition, nor the upward grasp of pride. It is the rising of truth. The kind of truth that needs no defense, no weapon, no argument, because it simply is. In the silence of your own being, you begin to witness the unfolding of life without resistance. This does not mean you become passive. It means you stop clinging. You stop grasping at what must pass. You stop pushing away what needs to be seen. You stop pretending the river is not flowing, and instead you learn to float. To float does not mean to drift without direction. It means to stop fighting the current of what is. When you float in silence, you begin to hear what the world has always been whispering to you, that you belong, that you are enough, that the breath you take now is sacred, simply because it is. The Buddha called this Sama Ditthi, right view, the beginning of all transformation. Not a view built from opinions or ideologies, but a clear seeing of things as they are, impermanent, interconnected, empty of a fixed self, full of potential. Right view is not just about how you see the world, it's about how you see yourself in it. Are you the center, struggling against everything? Or are you part of a vast unfolding, a single note in the music of life? When you shift from control to communion, from ego to awareness, peace arises naturally. And with peace comes vision. Not the vision of fantasy or ambition, but the kind of vision that sees deeply into the moment, that sees pain and responds with care, that sees joy and bows in gratitude, that sees confusion and meets it with patience. This vision is not found in the eyes, but in the heart. The heart, when quieted, becomes the greatest teacher. It speaks not in logic, but in presence, not in theory, but in compassion. And its voice is clearest in silence. To hear it, you must be willing to be still. Still, even when the world shouts. Still, even when the mind races. Still, even when emotion surges, like a storm. For stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of unwavering awareness in the midst of movement. The eye of the hurricane, the mountain beneath the clouds. And from that stillness, intention is born. Not reaction, not habit, but intention. Clear, deliberate, rooted in truth. The Buddha spoke of right intention. Intention that arises from letting go, from goodwill, from compassion. This is not about trying to be good. It is about recognizing that you already carry within you the seeds of goodness. When you water them with stillness, they grow. And when your intentions are clear, your actions become powerful. Not forceful, but powerful because they come from alignment. When your speech, your steps, your daily rituals align with your deepest knowing, there is no more conflict within. You no longer betray yourself in the name of success. You no longer abandon your truth to gain approval. You no longer scatter your energy chasing what will never satisfy. Instead, you become whole, and wholeness is healing. This wholeness is not perfection. It is not a final state. It is the quiet realization that everything you need to walk the path is already within you. The breath is here. The awareness is here. The stillness is here. You need only return. But to return requires discipline, not the harsh discipline of punishment, but the steady discipline of devotion. The Buddha did not attain liberation through wishful thinking. He sat for hours, days, weeks. He watched his thoughts rise and fall. He endured discomfort. He let go of fear, and in that letting go, he became free. This discipline is not about denying life. It is about facing it fully, meeting each moment with presence, showing up even when it's hard, choosing truth even when it costs you, staying with the breath when everything inside you wants to run. Discipline is love made visible through commitment. When you commit to silence, you are not escaping the world. You are entering it more deeply. You are choosing to respond rather than react, to create space between impulse and action. And in that space, your power returns. That is how stillness becomes strength. Not the strength to dominate, but the strength to remain soft. Not the strength to win, but the strength to stay open. Not the strength to resist the moment, but the strength to surrender to it and still be whole. From this strength comes right action. Action rooted not in fear or desire, but in awareness. You begin to move through the world differently. You listen more. You speak with care. You choose simplicity over excess, truth over comfort, peace over approval. And with each step, healing deepens, not only within you, but around you. You become a field of stillness in a world that rushes. You become a presence of gentleness in a world that shouts. You become a reminder of peace, simply by being peace. This is how transformation happens, not all at once, but breath by breath, choice by choice, moment by moment. You will not always feel strong. You will not always feel still, but the commitment to return, again and again, to the silence within you, that is the true path. And on that path, you will discover something profound. Gratitude. Not the forced gratitude of positive thinking, but the natural gratitude that arises when you are fully present, when you realize that each breath is a miracle, that each moment is an unrepeatable gift, that even your suffering has shaped your understanding, softened your heart, and led you to this quiet knowing. In silence, gratitude does not need to be spoken. It radiates from your being. You begin to see beauty where you once saw bird. You begin to thank the moment, even if it is painful, because you see what it is teaching you. You begin to feel joy, not because life is perfect, but because you are no longer resisting its imperfection. This is the joy the Buddha spoke of. The joy that comes not from getting what you want, but from wanting what is. The joy that arises when you stop clinging, stop comparing, stop running, and simply be. And when joy meets discipline, the spirit becomes unshakable. This is resilience, the ability to remain whole in the face of change, to bend without breaking, to feel deeply without drowning, to rise again, not because you never fall, but because you know where your center is, and you have returned to it. In silence, that center becomes clear. It is not a place, it is not a possession, it is a presence, your presence, and that presence is the most healing force in the world. There is a moment in every journey when the silence becomes so deep, so honest, that you are no longer afraid of what it reveals. The shadows that once made you run now appear as old companions, misunderstood, yes, but no longer enemies. You begin to see that healing is not about erasing what has happened, it is about integrating it, about bowing to your wounds and saying, "Thank you for teaching me where I was asleep." This is the quiet revolution of presence. You do not need to conquer yourself, you need to love what has long been unseen. Stillness gives you the space to meet your own broken pieces, not as threats, but as parts of your becoming. Every scar becomes a doorway, every ache becomes a signal, every mistake becomes a mirror. The Buddha never promised a life without pain, but he did promise that with right understanding, pain need not become suffering. And that is where your power lies, not in the removal of pain, but in your capacity to meet it with compassion, clarity, and calm. When you are truly still, you begin to observe the mind as it is, not as you wish it to be. You see its patterns, its defenses, its cravings. You see the habits that once ruled you without question. And in seeing them, you are no longer ruled. This is not about judgment. It is about honest. Stillness gives birth to honesty, not the harsh kind that shames, but the luminous kind that liberates. You begin to see how often you have betrayed your own peace in search of validation. How often you have abandoned your stillness to chase a story that never truly nourished you. And yet in that seeing, you are freed. Not condemned, freed to begin again. The Buddha said, "With our thoughts we make the world, but the world shaped by unconscious thought is full of suffering. The world shaped by conscious awareness is full of peace." And so the practice deepens, not by doing more, but by being more awake in the doing. You begin to eat with attention, to walk with attention, to speak, not to impress, but to connect. You begin to listen to silence, not as an absence of sound, but as a sacred container for truth. Silence becomes your refuge, your teacher, your guide. In this silence, you learn adaptability, not from force, but from deep trust. You begin to see that life is not meant to be controlled, but embraced, that every change, even the unwanted ones, carries wisdom, that even the endings are beginnings, dressed in unfamiliar clothing. You learn to bend with the winds of life, not because you are weak, but because you are rooted. Rooted in stillness, rooted in presence, rooted in a wisdom that no longer needs the world to be different in order to be at peace. This adaptability is not resignation, it is resilience, in motion. It is the art of letting go without giving up, of moving forward without closing the heart, of meeting each new wave, not as a threat, but as a dance, because life is movement. But the eye of that movement, the unmoving center, is stillness. And you carry that center within you. In silence, you begin to see how much energy is wasted, resisting what is. You begin to reclaim that energy, and with it, you become a force of grounded clarity in a chaotic world. This clarity is not loud. It does not need to be. It is felt. And those around you will feel it, not because you try to impress them, but because you have stopped needing to. That is the quiet charisma of presence. It does not beg to be seen. It simply shines. And in that light, others feel safe to be themselves, to drop their masks, to speak their truth, to exhale. Your stillness becomes a mirror in which others remember their own depth. This is not selfish. This is sacred, because healing is not a solitary act. It is a ripple. As you learn to meet yourself with compassion, you begin to meet others differently. You begin to see that everyone you encounter is carrying something invisible, that behind every harsh word is a story, that behind every smile may be a silent ache. And so you soften, not because you are naive, but because you are wise. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to correct every misunderstanding. You begin to choose peace over pride, stillness over reaction, depth over dominance. This does not mean you become passive. It means your action is guided by clarity, not compulsion. And clarity is born in silence. From this clarity, a new way of living emerges. Not the life others told you to chase. Not the life designed by fear or comparison, but the life that feels like coming home to yourself. You begin to ask different questions, not what do I want, but what is aligned, not what will impress, but what is true, not how can I escape this moment, but how can I fully inhabit it. And with each question you return to presence, return to breath, return to the pulse of life beneath all doing. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within, do not seek it without." And this is the great turning point. When you stop searching for wholeness in the next achievement, the next relationship, the next idea, when you begin to realize the next thing is not the answer, the now, this is not a philosophy, it is a practice, a moment-by-moment choice to be here, to be honest, to be still, and in that stillness, to listen not just with the ears, but with the soul, to listen for what is asking to be healed, to listen for what has long waited to be held, to listen for what you forgot in the noise, and are now ready to remember in the silence. You are not here to be perfect, you are here to be present. You are not here to escape your humanity, you are here to embody it fully with love, with courage, with grace, and that grace lives in stillness. Stillness is not the end of the path, it is the soil from which all right action grows. It is the place where clarity takes root, where compassion blooms, where resilience is born, where truth is remembered, and where power, the quiet, unshakable kind, awake power, not the kind that dominates, not the kind that manipulates or conquers, but the kind that dwells quietly beneath the surface of things, the kind that does not demand attention, but commands respect, the kind that rises not from force, but from deep alignment with truth. Stillness is the well from which this power is drawn, and it is endless, because it does not depend on circumstances, validation, or control. It depends only on your willingness to return, again and again, to this breath, this body, this moment. This return is a revolution, a gentle one, but a revolution nonetheless. Because in a world that teaches you to move faster, consume more, and become someone else, stillness says, stop, be, Listen, and when you do, everything begins to change, not out there, but in here. You begin to see yourself clearly, without the masks, without the noise. You begin to see the stories you've carried, the ones that told you you were not enough, not lovable, not strong. And you see that they were never yours to begin with. They were inherited, learned, internalized, but not true. Stillness does not argue with these stories. It dissolves them, gently, like light dissolving darkness, like truth dissolving fear. You begin to unlearn, not in your mind, but in your body, in your breath, in your bone. You begin to feel safe being yourself, not the curated self, not the performative self, but the honest, present, breathing self that you have always been beneath the layers. And that safety is power, because when you are no longer performing, no longer pretending, no longer protecting an image, all your energy returns to you. Energy once scattered in people-pleasing, overthinking, defending, explaining, now available for presence, for creation, for love. This is the true nature of healing. It is not adding, it is subtracting. It is removing all that is not you so that what is true can shine effortlessly. And in that shining, there is no strain, only radiance. The Buddha radiated, not because he was trying to be special, but because he had stopped being anything other than what he was. When you stop trying to be impressive and start being real, something magical happens. People feel it. They may not be able to explain it, but they feel safe, held, because presence is contagious. Your stillness becomes a sanctuary, not just for you, but for the world around you. This is the greatest gift you can offer, your own wholeness, not your perfection, not your advice, but your being, unarmored, awake. But to arrive here, you must be willing to let go, not just of distractions, but of identities, the role of the savior, the achiever, the one who never rests, the one who always knows. Stillness invites you to enter the unknown, to sit in the mystery without grasping for an answer, to live in the space between breaths, between moments, between definitions. This is where creativity awakens, not from noise, but from spaciousness. This is where insight emerges, not from force, but from surrender. The greatest breakthroughs in life come not when you are trying to fix everything, but when you are silent enough to let things reveal themselves. The problem you've been analyzing suddenly dissolves in stillness. The pain you've been resisting suddenly transforms when you stop pushing it away, because everything in you wants to be seen, and when you become still enough to see it, you are no longer at war with yourself. You become an ally to your own unfolding, and that alliance changes everything. You begin to trust yourself, not the anxious self, not the reactive self, but the deep self, the timeless awareness beneath the surface noise. From that trust, a new rhythm is born. You begin to live not from habit or fear, but from attunement. You begin to move with life, not against it. The Buddha called this living in accordance with Dharma, not as a dogma, but as a harmony, a way of being that reflects the natural order of things. In this rhythm, your days feel different. Even simple moments become sacred. Washing dishes, walking in the morning light, holding eye contact with someone you love. These become portals into presence, and presence is the true miracle. You no longer wait for life to give you meaning. You bring meaning to each moment by being fully there. This is the secret, the one you've known all along but forgotten in the noise. You are already whole. You do not need to be fixed. You need to be met, fully, gently. Now, in this meeting, in this stillness, something ancient stirs, not a thought, not a concept, a knowing, a deep, visceral knowing that you are part of something vast, that the breath you take is not yours alone, that your healing is not for you alone. You begin to see yourself in others, in their suffering, in their longing, in their forgetting, and you soften, you judge less, you forgive more, not because it's noble but because it is natural when you remember who you are. And so you become a healing presence, not by trying to fix others, but by embodying what is possible when one person chooses to be fully alive, fully here, fully still. This is the power of silence. Not that it hides you, but that it reveals you. It strips away the false and returns you to what is essential. And what is essential is not far. It is right here, in your breath, in your noticing, in your willingness to stop running and begin listening. The world may still be noisy, the challenges may still arise, but you will no longer be moved by every wave, because you have found your still point, and that stillness is unshakable. This is not a fantasy, it is a practice, and it begins now. Now is always the doorway, not tomorrow, not once everything is perfect, not when the pain has passed. Now, and in this now, you are invited, not forced to return. Return not to an idea of peace, but to the experience of it, not to a story of who you are, but to the direct presence of what you are. This is the sacred return, and no matter how many times you've forgotten, no matter how many years you've wandered, the door has never closed. The silence has never left you. It has waited, like the sky waits behind the clouds, like the ocean waits beneath the waves, like the mountain waits beneath the snow. Still, patient, whole. This is what you begin to feel when you stop distracting yourself from yourself. When you sit and breathe and let the world inside you settle like dust on a windowsill. In this stillness, you do not become less. You become more open, more aware, more connected. Because connection is not made in noise, it is made in present. It is made when one soul touches another without needing to be anything else. And you can only do that when you have returned to your own soul. This is the paradox. You cannot love others more deeply than you are willing to be with yourself. And stillness teaches you how to be with yourself, not as a project, but as a presence. The Buddha once said, "You, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection, not because of what you've done, not because of what you'll achieve, but because you exist." In silence, you begin to feel that truth, not as a quote on a page, but as a vibration in your heart. You begin to soften, not in weakness, but in realness. You begin to realize that the armor you've carried has become too heavy, and that it was never protecting you. It was separating you. So you let it go, piece by piece. The mask of "I'm fine," the mask of "I know what I'm doing," the mask of "I have to hold it all together." And beneath them all you find your breath. And beneath that your being. And it is enough. Not just enough, it is sacred. When you return to this sacredness, the mind begins to rest. Not because every question has been answered, but because the need to constantly answer dissolves, and what remains is space. From that space, new wisdom arises, not the kind you read, not the kind you memorize, but the kind that moves through you like intuition. You begin to know what to say, not because you rehearsed it, but because it is true. You begin to know what to do, not because it's expected, but because it is aligned. You begin to know when to stay, when to leave, when to speak, when to be silent. And this knowing is not loud, it is gentle, quiet, clear. It does not argue, it does not beg, it simply is. This is the voice of your true self, and you can only hear it in stillness. This is why the Buddha taught mindfulness, not as a trendy technique, but as a way of returning to what is real, to what is here, to what is always available when you stop running. Mindfulness is not about controlling life, it is about coming into full contact with it, feeling the warmth of the sun on your face, tasting the tea, hearing the rain, not as background noise but as life itself. When you live this way, gratitude becomes your natural state, not because everything is perfect, but because you are present enough to see the miracle in the ordinary. You begin to understand that the small is never small, that a single breath, fully received, is worth more than 1,000 empty accomplishments, that sitting with someone in silence can be more healing than 1,000 words. And so you stop chasing, you stop rushing, you stop believing the lie that joy is always after this. Joy is here, in the breath, in the body, in the now. Stillness is not the end of the journey. It is the ground from which the true journey begins. From it, you will move again, but this time, not from fear, not from lack, not from trying to be enough. You will move from wholeness. You will move from peace. You will move from alignment. And because of that, everything you touch will carry that same energy. Your words will calm. Your presence will soften. Your choices will heal. This is what the world is truly hungry for. Not more noise, not more opinions, but more presence, more hearts who have come home, more beings who have remembered who they are, not as ideas but as awareness itself. You do not need to wait until you are ready. You are ready now, not because you have no fear, but because you are willing to meet that fear with stillness. Not because the path is clear, but because you are willing to walk with presence, even through the fog. Not because everything is healed, but because you understand healing is not a destination. It is a practice, a way of being, a way of breathing, a way of listening. And when you listen deeply, you will always know stillness is not emptiness. It is power. It is peace. It is home. You are home, not because the world has changed, but because you have remembered the space within you that was never broken, never lacking, never confused. The place beneath all thought, beneath all striving, beneath all stories, pure, quiet. This is the treasure the Buddha pointed to, not in temples, not in doctrines, but in your own direct experience of now. He did not ask you to believe, he asked you to look. He asked you to sit in silence, to observe, to breathe, to peel away illusion after illusion until only what is real remains. And what is real cannot be taken from you. It cannot be sold. It cannot be destroyed, because it was never born. It simply is, and from that silence arises a strength the world cannot measure, a strength that does not push, but endures, that does not shout, but uplifts, that does not dominate but liberates. This is the power of the awakened heart. It sees suffering and does not turn away. It sees impermanence and does not cling. It sees fear and does not, because it knows everything that rises will fall. Every storm will pass. Every wound will heal. And what remains, always, is presence. This presence is your true refuge. Not a place to hide from life, but a place to meet it with open arms. Not a fortress of detachment, but a garden of compassion. And you are the gardener. Every breath a seed. Every silence a nurturing rain. Every moment of stillness, sunlight on the soil of your soul. You do not need more answers. You need deeper listening. You do not need to force your life into shape. You need to soften into the shape that life already offers you. The shape of trust. The shape of surrender. The shape of now. You are not late. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are on time. You are enough. You are already on the path, because you are here, listening, breathing, opening. This moment is your teacher. This breath, your meditation bell. This stillness, your sanctuary. You are the one you have been waiting for. The silence within you. The one you tried to fill with noise, with plans, with distraction. It was never a void. It was a doorway. And you have walked through. So now, carry this stillness into your days. Let it walk beside you in the marketplace, in your conversations, in your solitude. Let it color the way you speak, the way you love, the way you forgive. Let it guide your hands, your choices, your attention. You will forget. You will fall asleep again. You will lose your center, but you will remember faster each time. You will return more easily. You will deepen more fully, because once you've tasted truth, even silence calls your name. So trust the stillness, trust the space between thoughts, trust the slow path, the gentle voice, the quiet knowing, and let this be your vow, to return, again and again, to that silent place within, until your very presence becomes a balm for the world, until your life becomes not just a story of healing, but the embodiment of it, not just a search for peace, but the living presence of it. You don't need to be a monk. You don't need to leave your life behind. You don't need robes or titles. You need only this, to be here, fully, quietly, bravely, because healing in silence is not weakness, it is mastery. It is remembering that stillness was never the absence of movement. It was the presence of you, the you that watches, the you that forgives, the you that returns, and in your return, the world changes, not all at once, not in grand explosions, but in subtle ways, a softer breath, a kinder word, a moment of pause where before there was only haste, and these moments, they ripple, and these ripples, they heal, and this healing, it matters, because the stillness within you is not yours alone. It is the stillness of the Buddha in you, the light in you, the wisdom in you, and now it is awake.